What would you do if a child told you there's someone under their bed? The house was quiet as Julia settled her son Charlie into bed. She brushed a hand through his soft hair and whispered, "Good night, sweetheart." Charlie gave her a sleepy smile, his eyelids drooping, and Julia kissed his forehead before turning off the lamp. As she left his room, she left the door ajar, casting a thin sliver of light across his bed. Just as she reached the end of the hallway, she heard Charlie's small voice, barely more than a whisper. "Mommy," he said, his voice trembling. "There's someone under my bed." Julia stopped, a chill settling over her as she turned slowly, confusion etched on her face. She had just tucked him in, but the fear in his voice was unmistakable. She walked back down the hall, heart pounding a little harder with each step. Inside his room, the air felt colder, the shadows deeper. When she stepped inside, Charlie was sitting up, his eyes wide and filled with fear. Julia moved to his bedside, crouched down and looked into his face. "What's wrong, honey?" she asked softly, though she already knew the answer. Charlie swallowed, glancing down at the floor. "Mommy, there's someone under my bed." Julia's heart skipped a beat. She took a deep breath, steeling herself. Maybe he was just seeing things. Maybe it was only a nightmare. Gently, she knelt beside his bed and lifted the covers, peering into the darkness beneath. And there, huddled close to the wall, was Charlie, her Charlie, his eyes wide with terror, his small body trembling. He looked up at her, his gaze pleading, and in a barely audible whisper he said, "Mommy, there's someone in my bed." Julia's blood ran cold. Her eyes darted from the child under the bed to the child she had just tucked in. Her mind raced, grappling with what she was seeing. The boy on the bed was eerily still, lying perfectly straight, facing the wall, his shoulders unmoving. The Charlie under the bed reached out and grabbed her hand. His grip was tight, desperate. "Please, Mommy, don't let it see me," he whispered. Julia felt frozen, her mind caught in a spiral of disbelief and horror. She glanced back up at the figure lying on the bed. Slowly, her hand shaking, she reached out and touched the boy's shoulder. His skin was cold, too cold. The figure on the bed turned to face her, and Julia's breath caught in her throat. It had Charlie's face, identical in every way, but the eyes were empty, dark, and hollow, a twisted smile creeping across its face. "Good night, Mommy," it whispered in a voice that was almost, but not quite, Charlie's. Julia's instincts took over. She yanked her real son out from under the bed, clutching him to her chest as she stumbled backward. The figure on the bed began to rise, its movements slow and deliberate, as though savoring her fear. It crawled off the bed, its head tilting at an unnatural angle, the twisted smile never leaving its face. "Run," Julia whispered to Charlie, shielding his eyes as they backed toward the door. But as she reached for the handle, it wouldn't turn. The door was locked, trapping them inside. Behind them, the figure took another step forward. "Don't leave," it hissed, the words curling out of its mouth like smoke. Julia felt her son's small hands clinging to her, trembling with fear. In desperation, she tried to shield him from the sight, whispering, "Close your eyes, Charlie. Don't open them. No matter what." Charlie buried his face in her shoulder, obeying her without question. But Julia couldn't look away. She had to keep watching it, had to make sure it didn't get any closer. Suddenly, the lights flickered, casting the room into momentary darkness. When they came back on, standing in the doorway was another figure, one she recognized instantly. It was herself. Another Julia, identical in every way, stood in the doorway with the same empty, hollow gaze and that twisted smile. The second Julia tilted her head, her eyes locking onto her terrified counterpart, and whispered, "You took my child. Now I'm here to take yours." The real Julia felt her heart pounding in her chest, her grip tightening around Charlie. But as she looked back at the figure on the bed and the second Julia blocking the door, she realized she had no way out. As the lights flickered one last time, plunging the room into complete darkness, the only sound left was her son's muffled scream.